Welcome to part 2 of the 2004 Yamaha Grizzly 660 engine rebuild. In this episode we will put it all back together and get it running, and a surprise at the end for upcoming videos. Stay tuned. Now go ahead and pry off the old gasket. Alright, one thing to remember when putting a new piston in a new cylinder, or a new piston in an old cylinder, check your ring gap. Each one of your rings, stick them in the cylinder here. Make sure everything's lubed up real good. Cylinder and the ring. Put your piston without any rings on in there, just so that it's even all the way around, more or less. And take it out, and then check your ring gap. For the compression rings, top and second, 0.3 to 0.45 millimeters. For the oil ring, 0.2 to 0.7. That's a pretty big variance there. 0.3. Okay, so you don't want it to be any less than 0.3. And it went in, but it's kind of, well, there we go. I was just at the wrong angle. So it's got to go in, and it's got to be able to move with very little drag. A little bit of drag is fine, but you don't want it to be stuck in there and you can't move it or wiggle it at all. Gap is good. So once your gap is checked, you can install them on the piston and then install everything in the engine. Now if your ring gap is too small, you can't get that minimum feeler gauge in there, take the ring out and file one edge of it a little bit, put it back in, test it until you can get that feeler gauge to move freely in there. Now once all your rings are on, you got your two compression rings set 180 apart, the gaps, and lube up your gudgeon pin and get it placed on one side. You'll set it onto the connecting rod and then push the pin in and then install those snap rings. Alright, so the idea is to put one side of the ring in its groove, like so, and then lever the other side in. While pushing on it, use the bottom portion of the piston as the lever, the place to put your lever. Make sure your gasket surface is clean. Dowel pins are in. Put your new gasket on. And now we're ready to put the cylinder back on. Make sure you've lubed up the cylinder with oil. Be liberal. You can go ahead and lube the rings on the piston as well. After struggling for a while, I decided I didn't have enough hands to complete this job on my own, so I enlisted the help of my daughter, Bridget. Perfect. Okay, now we work on the next one. It's going on a little crooked. There we go. Perfect. As you can see here, I've blocked movement of the piston by placing a pick in between the gears on the crank and the oil pump there. Have someone help you push the cylinder down as you are compressing the rings from underneath. We did it! Now it's got a new cylinder and a new piston, new rings. These bolts are torqued down to 30 foot-pounds. Go in a crisscross pattern so you tighten it down evenly. First go around, I'm just snugging them all so I start to feel some pressure. Second go around, snug a little more. Third go around, snug some more. I hit 30 on that one. On that one. And then just keep going around, go around one more time. There are two smaller bolts, Allen heads, that go in there. Don't forget, this goes here. Alright, the surface of the top of the cylinder is all clean. Dowel pins are in, guiding pins are in, whatever you want to call them. Bottom of the head is clean. Machined, resurfaced, all that good stuff. I'm going to have to guide the chain through as I put this on. I have a wire attached to the chain. Hopefully that'll make it easier. Now these main head bolts are 27 foot-pounds. Don't forget there's two on the underside as well. Same idea. Take it slow. Start by just a little snug. Do all 6. A little snug. This next part was a little hard to film, so I'll just go over what I did. Grab yourself some wire. Make sure your chain comes all the way through and up to the top here. Hold it in place by tying the wire up here somewhere. Make sure your guides are in. You can see here I've got both guides. Lube up your cam. Stick your cam in. Make sure it lines up with the timing marks. Flat part of the lobes are up, and also there's these holes here and there. So those need to be facing up. The other way to tell the timing marks, there are 3 on the cam gear itself. One is underneath this panel here, one on the side here, and one on the other side here. You got to be able to see all 3 right there on the cam gear. So those 2 are going to be flush with the top of the head. The 3rd one's going to be at the very top, covered by that cover. As long as you can see both of those timing marks flush with the head there, you are at top dead center like you're supposed to be. I went ahead and put some pins in the gears here to keep it from moving around. I knew this was top dead center on the crank because I twisted it when the head was off and I could see the cylinder. It wouldn't go any further up or down. It was at the very top, and that's where I left it. And then I put those pins in to hold it in place. So once you've got your cam in place, just stretch your chain over the top. Don't forget to put some silicone sealant in some key areas around the spark plug tube, around these hard to get places. Make sure you don't have a ton, because if it squeezes into these areas, it'll get on the cam and then grind off and then end up in your engine oil. I just did the rest of the sealant around the perimeter. You can see it on that side and the front side as well. Now, screw all these bolts down, but spread them out so you're not doing it unevenly. So I've cleaned everything up, put the one-way gear back on with the starter gear behind it. I put the tool back on the rotor, and I went ahead and bought that size bolt. For comparison, the head bolts are that long. Put a washer on it, put some anti-seize on the very end, and now we're going to try and run it in. Shouldn't be too much torque needed. It's not like we're pressing it on, it's just a really snug fit. As you can see, I've already installed and activated the tensioner. Now, adjusting the valve gap is pretty straightforward. The manual says between 0.1 and 0.15 millimeters. What you do is loosen the nut with a 10 millimeter. Loosen this nut, and there's a square screw head right here. You turn it to the right to tighten it in, to the left to loosen it out. And once you got it to where your desired gap will slide in and out without too much resistance, you're good to go. And then you can go ahead and check the upper limit and the lower limit. Make sure it's not bigger than the upper limit and not smaller than the lower limit. And then when you've got it where you want it, tighten it down. Double check the gap to see that it didn't move, and go to the next one. Now getting the exhaust side is going to be a little trickier because it's little tight quarters there, but it's the same deal. The gap is a little different too. The manual says the exhaust side is between 0.15 and 0.20. I'm just doing some buttoning up now. I installed the exhaust header with new gaskets on the head there, a new seal in between the muffler and the header right there. I've got a new heat shield coming. This is all torn apart. I filled her up with coolant and oil. I've been routing these hoses and stuff, buttoning up the new water pump. And then I was gonna put the coolant reservoir on and I accidentally dropped it. And it broke. So I got a new one of those coming. It's just been sitting out in the sun, so the plastic was brittle. And something I almost forgot was this seal here on the engine cover. I'm gonna go ahead and replace it real quick. Shouldn't take too long. It's T25 Torx. Easiest way to take these out is just to find yourself a sturdy flathead screwdriver and stick it in there and pry it off. Just like that. The inside looks like that. There's a little spring there that I damaged, but since we got a new one, no big deal. There's your part number for that. I've got a 1.5 inch socket that fits nicely on this, and it looks like the seal can be inserted all the way in, and it rests up against that outer housing of the bearing inside there. Grab yourself a dead blow. Not a super tight fit like some seals, but it is resisting a little bit, so I guess that's why there's that bracket there that holds it in. Just go until this outer edge here is flush with the housing, and now it's ready for this securing bracket. A little bit of Loctite on these screws, Now you can put a little bit of oil on the shaft and it'll slip right in. Well, I plugged everything back in and got the gas tank back on, and it's running fuel into the carb, and it's ready for its first startup after the rebuild. Let's give it a try. Put the choke on. We gotta get some gas, I think. Believe it or not, that's quieter than it was and less stinky. Usually there'd be a plume of smoke coming out the front and the back. There were leaks in the header gaskets there. There was a leak there that made it loud. So at least all the sound is going out towards the back. I think that muffler is not being as effective as a brand new muffler, but I'm not looking for the quietest, most expensive ATV. I just need something that works real well. So that's exciting. Now the next step is to get the rear fender off and start mocking up everything. I got some new parts. Here's the front luggage rack. Once I've got everything stripped down, I'll prep the plastic panels. I've got, as you can see over here, here's the old red one. It's all broken up. Here's the green one. That's a junkyard piece, and that's gonna be painted. We're gonna do the Subaru cool khaki blue. I don't even think that's the most exciting part. The most exciting part to me is doing this transformation here. While I was camping one time, I had a dream, and on my ATV I was able to drive on both side wheels and have a lot of fun doing that. And I figured there's got to be an easy way to make my ATV top heavy enough to where I can do that all the time, do that anytime I want. And then I got to thinking, maybe doing wheelies and stoppies with training wheels would be fun. So what I want to do is make the front end more structural and then make some bolt-on parts where we have a wheel in front, put some weights on here to make the front end a little more heavy, and then when you do a stoppie it'll be easier to tip that up, and then that'll land on the ground and I can actually continue to drive if I want using four-wheel drive. And then stoppies will be easier too if I put some weight back here, and I shouldn't be able to go too far doing a wheelie. I've never been gutsy enough or stupid enough to try these things, so I want to make myself some training wheels. I think it'll be fun. Hey, I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Please comment below and tell me what you think of the project coming up. Hit the like button. Please subscribe. And hit the notification bell as well. Get updated on my latest videos. It was great being here with you. Thanks a lot, and we'll see you next time. Remember, stay crafty. Bye. I've always been able to make it home, and so it feels pressure and stops. So there's not enough fuel and it can't start. So the gas and the fuel lines there. Quit licking me. Oops. Miles, that's not nice. Look on my face.
How do you feel after that?
Aren't these stickers cute?